Greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to VC Friday. As promised, the subject of today's sermon is the 1975 album Bongo Fury by Frank Zappa, The Mothers, and Captain Beefheart. Bongo Fury occupies a unique niche in Frank Zappa's catalog. Even apart from Captain Beefheart's participation, it's the only album by this particular Mothers lineup, and most of the songs were only ever performed by this band. It's a transitional album between the jazzier, funkier Mothers of the previous couple of years and the punchier rock sound of the later Zappa bands, with veteran jazzman George Duke making his last appearance on a Zappa album, and brash young drummer Terry Bozzio making his first. It's presented as a live album, and it certainly has a raw, live feel, but it is sprinkled with studio recordings, with even the live material being extensively edited and overdubbed in the studio. It's the final album credited to the Mothers, before Zappa switched to recording exclusively under his own name. And it's the only rock album in the Zappa oeuvre on which Zappa shares the billing with another artist. But then Captain Beefheart looms so large in Zappa lore that his name just had to be on the marquee, so to speak. And that takes us back a couple of decades. In 1956, the 15-year-old Frank Zappa met the 15-year-old Don Vliet while they were both attending Antelope Valley High School in Lancaster, California. The two became fast friends, sharing oddball personalities and a love of the blues and doo-wop music, spending hours spinning records together while munching pineapple buns from Don's father's bakery truck. The pair even began making crude recordings of their own using a borrowed tape recorder.
The music was thud-like.
And Frank momentously bestowed unto Don Vliet the moniker Captain Beefheart. Meanwhile, Frank's younger brother Bobby became friends with another recent Lancaster arrival, one Denny Wally, who will turn up again later in the Bongo Fury saga. After graduating high school, Frank moved away from Lancaster, and Don worked for a time as a salesman. But when Frank ended up purchasing and moving into a recording studio in Rancho Cucamonga, Don moved south to join him. The studio was dubbed Studio Z by Frank, where Frank and Don formed their own band called The Suits and collaborated on a number of ambitious projects that never came to fruition. When the two finally came to public attention in the mid-60s, it was as the leaders of separate bands, Frank with the Mothers of Invention, and Don with Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band. In 1969, Zappa produced Beefheart's thorny magnum opus, Trout Mask Replica, for his own Straight Records label. The notoriously difficult music on Trout Mask Replica could hardly have been expected to set the charts on fire, but Beefheart blamed Zappa for the album's lack of commercial success, and the two friends fell out. Flash forward to 1974. Under the influence of new manager and producer Andy DiMartino, Captain Beefheart had made an ill-advised effort to make his music more acceptable to the musical mainstream, in other words, to go commercial. The attempt to sell out was a dismal failure both musically and commercially. Outraged at how the first DiMartino-produced album, Unconditionally Guaranteed, turned out, Beefheart's Magic Band members deserted him en masse. The follow-up album, Blue Jeans and Moonbeams, was recorded with faceless session players and bombed miserably. The noble captain was left at the low point of his career. In desperation, he turned to his erstwhile friend Frank Zappa for help. He apologized for bad-mouthing Zappa in the press, and Zappa agreed to bring him on board as a member of the Mothers. The Mothers lineup that the Captain joined retained Napoleon Murphy Brock, George Duke, and Tom Fowler from the 1973 to 74 band, with Tom Fowler's brother Bruce returning on trombone after an absence of some months. Departing were Chester Thompson and Ruth Underwood. Chester was replaced by little skinny Terry Bozzio, that cute little drummer. But Ruth Underwood, whose distinctive percussion virtuosity had become such a key part of Zappa's sound, was not replaced by another percussionist. Instead, the band was completed by Denny Wally from the Lancaster days, as previously mentioned, on slide guitar. Thus configured, the Mothers toured the USA in April and May of 1975, and over 2 nights at the Armadillo World Headquarters in Austin, Texas, a venue already immortalized in the song Inca Roads from the previous Mothers album, One Size Fits All, on May 20th and 21st, the live material for Bongo Fury was recorded. And it had to be in Texas, didn't it? The album has a hot, sweaty roadhouse atmosphere, an unmistakable Texas vibe, and Captain Beefheart's Howlin' Wolf from Venus vocalizing conspires with the location to make this the bluesiest album in Zappa's catalog. Bongo Fury was officially released on October 2nd, 1975. The cover photo by John Williams shows Zappa and Beefheart enjoying refreshments at a Foster's Freeze in Lancaster. I say enjoying somewhat ironically, as Frank is scowling at the camera and Beefheart's gaze is so downcast that his hat brim obscures almost all of his face. The photo is reversed left to right to put Frank on the left, and the photo appears deliberately chosen to make Frank look like the dominant partner. It seems to presage that the reconciliation between Zappa and Beefheart would soon hit the rocks again. But that's another story. Let's look at Bongo Fury.
Say she's a witch!
The album kicks off with Deborah Cadabra and a blast of raw electric blues guitar that wouldn't sound out of place on a ZZ Top album. See, it's this Texas vibe. Beefheart is at his most manic, barking out the opening vocal. The song has a weird, complex structure, shifting from idea to idea in a frenzied stream of consciousness, quoting from assorted R&B songs and even Dylan's Mr. Tambourine Man along the way, but never losing a tense, nervous, propulsive mood. The lyrics are as fragmented and surreal as the music, introducing characters such as Deborah Cadabra herself, as well as Shit-Ass Charlotte and Ione the Rancho Granny.
I own a rancher granny, should carry fanny.
Before taking in the story of a young Don Vliet experimenting with cosmetics that make his skin break out and then settling down to watch a horrible Mexican monster movie on Channel 13, which is something of a callback to Cheatness from the Roxy and Elsewhere album. The album track includes overdubbed backing vocals by Robert Camarena and Roy Estrada, who would both be part of the next Mothers lineup, which never got past the rehearsal stage.
Someone later on, I woke up when she was gone. There was dew out on the lawn in the sunrise.
The second track, Carolina Hardcore Ecstasy, features ensemble vocals with Frank and Napoleon taking lead parts, supported by George Duke and Denny Wally. It's a tale of a sexual encounter accompanied by a Doobie Brothers cassette, and the Doobie Brothers supported Frank Zappa in 1973 when I first saw him in concert at the best Frank Zappa show ever, which must someday be released. And the Doobie Brothers song Listen to the Music is quoted here. And the aforesaid sexual encounter ends up with an S&M scenario involving oversized plastic shoes. Zappa contributes a fiery guitar solo, but after the whirling madness of Debra Cadabra, this comes off as relatively conventional musically, a bit folky, strummy, but with clever elements such as the double-time, somewhat later on bridge melody, reappearing at half speed for the "Is This Something New" section.
Why, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, this black juice came out on a hard-shelled chin, and they call that tobacco juice.
Next up is Sam with the Showing Scalp Flat Top. And this spoken word piece, which gives the album its title, is the first of two poetic contributions credited solely to Don Van Vliet. The Mothers provide improvisational accompaniment, with Zappa doing a call and response thing with Beefheart, answering Beefheart's lines of poetry with either a blues lick or quotations from the 1930s exotica song Sweet Leilani, best remembered as a hit for Bing Crosby.
To our pockets of the world, our wrinkle pennies, our unfurled.
Poofter's Froth, Wyoming Plans Ahead is a satirical look at the preparations for the commercial exploitation of America's bicentennial in 1976, or as Frank cleverly spells it, the bicentennial. Musically, this is all-out country and western. A snappy country and western ditty with Beefheart vocals and harmonica. The hilarious lyrics include a subtle reference to Steve Reich's seminal minimalist composition, Come Out.
Come out to show them, come out to show them, come out to show them, come out to show them.
Which was quoted more overtly in Moonlight from Vermont from Beefheart's Trout Mask replica.
She's 200 years old. Saw me, she couldn't grow no limbs.
And side one of Bongo Fury closes with 200 Years Old. This is a studio recording, and it opens with a spoken word piece by Zappa, followed by Beefheart and Zappa sharing the lead vocal on a heavy, plodding blues in G. The description of a person squatting down and popping up in front of a jukebox is a reference to Zappa and Beefheart's shared past and the character they called the Stumbler, who also appeared in the song Village of the Sun. And Zappa tells the story of the Stumbler in his autobiography, The Real Frank Zappa Book, about the character who sort of worshipped the jukebox in the village inn. Side 2 begins with another studio recording, Cucamonga, sung by Zappa with Captain Beefheart providing harmonica. And this is a nostalgic look at Zappa's Studio Z days. So getting together with Beefheart really gave Frank some scope to revisit his past. In the conceptual continuity department, this tune as an instrumental was previously known as Farther Oblivion and was performed on stage as part of the Yellow Snow Suite at one time. And the line Nanook No No from Don't Eat the Yellow Snow itself is quoted. And for more on all that, see my apostrophe video.
She took George's watch like they always do. And a shame on you.
And then it's back to Austin for Advance Romance. Another down and dirty blues, again in the key of G. Basically a 2-chord blues this time, where the only change is that the turnaround goes to the flat 7, for all you guitarists out there. But Zappa stretches the form mercilessly, so you never know quite where it's going to go. Napoleon is the main vocalist, with interjections from George Duke, Zappa, and Beefheart. Extended solos from Denny Wally on slide, Beefheart on harmonica, and Zappa on guitar stretch this track out to over 11 minutes. At the end, the track suddenly shifts into overdrive with a frantic quadruple time bass throb. And more conceptual continuity. The character of potato-headed Bobby, who's mentioned in this song, is a callback to San Bernardino from One Size Fits All. And this name will pop up again a couple of times in future Zappa releases.
I could just make out Ace as he carried the tray and mouthed, "You cheap son of a bitch."
Man with the Woman Head is the second of two spoken word tracks credited to Don Van Vliet. Beefheart's poem is a studio recording, dubbed over a live group improvisation edited from a performance of A Pound for a Brown at the Austin shows. Beefheart can even be heard playing soprano saxophone in the background simultaneously while he's heard reciting the poem. And this is the only instance of Beefheart's sax playing that Zappa deigned to include on the album. The poem is an observational piece describing a character seen at a drive-in restaurant in Hollywood. And with stunning conceptual continuity, Zappa cuts from The Man with the Woman Head to his own song inspired by a restaurant in Hollywood and a customer there whose head resembled the muffin on his plate.
Girl, you thought it was a man, but it was a muffin.
The first half of Muffin Man is a spoken word piece by Zappa, recorded in the studio with accompaniment by George Duke on tack piano. And we'll talk more about that session later. Zappa tells of a mad scientist-type character who is obsessed with muffins, with his laboratory being called the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen, and that became the name of Zappa's own home recording studio. The second half of the track is the concert closer, a heavy, riff-based instrumental coda taken from Camarillo Brillo and turned into a song in its own right, with vocals overdubbed in the studio. Zappa plays a wailing guitar solo before introducing the band and signing off with the immortal "Good night, Austin, Texas, wherever you are." As mentioned, the official release date for Bongo Fury was October 2nd, 1975. I think it may actually have been a week later that it actually hit the stores, because I have a note that I purchased this very copy on October 9th. This is my original, purchased at the warehouse in San Diego, California for $4.96. I don't usually leave the shrink wrap on my albums, but I did in this case because it's got this great clear plastic hype sticker. And I just like having that on there. This is a promo copy of the album, where they applied that sticker directly to the cover, as well as giving it the little promo sticker. And here is an Australian pressing of the album. And the distinctive thing about this is that the photo is cropped a bit differently. Oh, and the hype sticker material is actually printed directly on the photo. This shows a bit of the menu from the Foster's Freeze, and you can see that the lettering is backwards, and that's the clue to how this photo is reversed left to right. The album charted at number 66 in Billboard, which was a come down from Zappa's previous 3 albums, which had all charted in the top 30. And the rationale for talking about Bongo Fury at this specific juncture in time is to celebrate the release of this anniversary edition, sort of a 50th anniversary plus edition, maybe 50 and a half anniversary of Bongo Fury, released by Universal. This is a 6-disc set with the album itself, both concerts from which the album was drawn. So we get the May 20th and 21st shows from Austin in their entirety over 4 CDs, plus some rehearsal tracks and assorted nuggets, including the remarkable Portuguese Lunar Landing, which is a song that was never released in any legitimate form in the past. And in addition, plus of course a DVD with the it's a Blu-ray, not a DVD, with the surround sound version of the album, plus some other surroundable nuggets to be enjoyed in one's own surroundable living room. And there are also some vinyl editions, including a straightforward reissue of the album itself, or alternately this, again, I haven't taken the shrink wrap off yet, but this is the new edition on what they're calling Black and Orange Galaxy vinyl. And in addition to the spiffy vinyl that I think is a good color for this album, fits with the mood of the album, you get a nice little print of the band members. And you'll notice that Terry Bozzio is the only one who doesn't have a mustache. Apparently he's so mean he couldn't grow a mustache. And this expanded double LP edition, which comes with a booklet, so sort of an enlarged version of the booklet from the box set, a different print showing Uncle Frank and the Noble Captain, and a second LP called Bonus Fury with various bonus tracks drawn from the box set. So what we get in Bonus Fury is Carolina Hardcore Ecstasy, which is a long version that reveals, a very long version, that reveals that Zappa originally arranged the song with extra repetitions of the chorus and played a much longer guitar solo compared to what ultimately appeared on the album, which he edited into a much more concise and effective form for the final product. Then there's Man with the Woman Head, which is the studio-recorded recitation only, stripped off of the live improv to which it had been grafted on the album itself. Then Muffin Man / A Little Green Rosetta, which is an outtake from the session with George Duke accompanying Frank on tack piano that also spawned Evelyn, a Modified Dog on the One Size Fits All album. Here Zappa segues a version of the Muffin Man intro into the song that ultimately was reworked in a full band arrangement to be the grand finale of Joe's Garage. But this is just the sort of prototype version, and an edit of this tack piano arrangement can be heard on Leather. Then there's Born to Suck, closing out side 3 of this Bonus Fury. This is a rollicking vocal chant, once again layering a studio vocal arrangement over a live jam, this time from Florentine Pogan. Engineer Michael Brownstein joins in on the vocal fun, and the whole thing really reminds me a lot of I Don't Even Care, which similarly evolved out of a stage arrangement of a different song, which in that case was Wowie Zowie. The final side begins with The Torture Never Stops original version, which features Captain Beefheart delivering a harsh, menacing vocal over a heavy blues arrangement strongly reminiscent of Smokestack Lightning. An edited version of this appearance previously appeared on the You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore Volume 4 set. When Zappa later recorded this song in the studio, it became a much more quietly sinister affair, as it appears on the Zoot Allures album. Then we get a a rehearsal version of Poofter's Froth, Wyoming plans ahead from the rehearsal session prior to the first gig of the tour. And finally, 200 Years Old, the same basic version that appears on the Bongo Fury album, but a much longer edit with a little more information about the Stumbler and everything. So that is Bongo Fury. Thanks very much for watching. Be well, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Some people like cupcakes better. I, for one, care less for them.